Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of FutureSox Podcast. As we are coming down the line, this is our last preview to the draft. And tonight we have Mr. Joe Doyle from Future Star Series and the Overslot Podcast joining us. How are you, Joe?
Guys, I always look forward to this podcast. I feel like this is at least the fourth year in a row that I've been on it. I might have been on it in 21, but no, I mean you guys are great. I like the show, so happy to be back.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Well, we know we have a little limited time tonight, so we're going to just hop right into it. How many players have you ranked this year, and where can White Sox fans find that?
So this is going to make me sound like a sicko. I wrote 989 scouting reports this year. And I am publishing 615 of them, as I do every year. It's the amount of picks to the draft. And so every year I like to see if I can get a higher percentage of the amount of names that get picked on my board. You can find the final 615 board at FutureStarSeries.com on Wednesday, July 9th. But yeah, I kind of feel bad for the 357 dudes that weren't good enough to cut 615. But hey, what are you gonna do?
Is it accessible though, at least? So when your 900th player gets taken, you can post it somewhere?
I will be posting it somewhere. That's for another day. I'll tell you all about what's coming for me later. But I think what's interesting is those players. I was really hoping all year, I think February, March, April, I was in the 700s, early 800s. I was like, I'm going to hit 1,000 this year. I'm going to hit 1,000. And I'm not going to be the guy that's just going to write 11 reports just to say I hit 1,000. But I got damn close this year, guys. Damn close.
That was insane. So obviously it's been an exhaustive process for you. What are your overall thoughts on the class just in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the narratives with this class ring true. I don't think it has an anchor at the top. I don't think there's a starship here that franchise altering player at the top, at least from this chair. Not a slam dunk. I think for me, Seth Hernandez is the top player in this class. There's a ton of risks that come with the high school right-hander, but if I was trying to, change my organization, Seth would be my pick. But just kind of zooming out to 10,000 feet, it's a good year for high school shortstops. It's a quietly a very, very good year for college pitchers in the first round. Deep. I mean, one of the deeper college pitching crops I can remember in my 8 or 9 years of doing this. But then I think if you zoom out even further, I think the depth in this class after the fourth round is really going to be tested. I don't see a lot of metric darlings, dated darlings, the guys that I've fallen in love with in the 6th and 7th round. I don't see as many of those guys this year, so I think it'll shallow out after day one of the draft.
Well, speaking of day one of the draft, there is a new format this year where you've got rounds 1 through 3 on Sunday, and then you've got 4 through 20 on Monday. Who, if anybody, is going to benefit from the restructuring of this, and do you like it?
I definitely don't like it. I mean, as a guy who's going to be at the event, I mean, day one starts at 6 p.m. Eastern. We are not going to be out of there until at minimum 11 p.m. And then after that, all of us members in the media have to write and re-rank and do this and do. I'm not going to go to bed until 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning on Monday. And then Monday is going to be just, that starts at 11 a.m. We're going to be doing that until 7 p.m., right? It's just, from what I've heard from folks inside of the industry, general managers, POBOs, the rationale that they wanted was one extra day to jump forward toward the trade deadline, to start those conversations, maybe get an extra day of vacation, I think is what a lot of people aren't talking about. It sucks, man. I don't get it. I don't understand the benefits of it. And it's just going to make for a tougher time. I tell you who really gets crushed by this is scouting directors. Like I said, we're finishing the draft at 11 p.m. Eastern. They have to do media. They have to do interviews. And then they have to re-rack their board and call agents and call players for the next day. That starts like 10 hours later. So it's going to be chaos, man.
And the White Sox have the first pick in the 4th round. So
chaos.
That's fun.
It's going to be chaos.
You know, like a lot of stuff. They could have a plan, and then that plan changes because somebody's like on the board that, you know, they just like weren't expecting.
I'll say this. The White Sox are probably in the best position with the first pick because at least they know, like, okay, we can figure out our pick and we don't have to see what other guys are going to take.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, but it's not like I think a lot of teams would do that before 11, right? Now they're going to, like, before the 11th. That's why it's such an important round. Now it's just like another round on Monday. It's, you know, it's just going to like continue, I'm assuming.
I don't think a lot I don't think there's going to be as many like, oh, this is how much money we saved in rounds 1 through 10. Let's splash in round 11. I still do think that there's going to be some overpays, but I'm talking like 350, 400 guys in the 11th round. I don't see how are we really going to see like $1.5 million Trey Gregory Alf in the no, like I don't think that player will happen in the 7th or 8th round now.
Right. It just makes sense to cut obviously in 7 through 10. So then you can get the 150 head start later, you know? So speaking of chaos, the Washington Nationals have the number 1 pick and they fired their general manager. That general manager has a pretty good relationship with the most prominent agent in the sport who represents 3 of the best players at the top. Just, you know, I guess handicap this situation. What did you think when it happened and how does it affect this thing potentially?
I mean, how you got to be stunned. Right. Anytime the general manager of the team with the number 1 pick is fired 6 days before they're expected to make that pick. You know, the thing that people aren't talking about here is they name Mike DeBartolo, the new general manager, interim general manager. And everyone thinks, oh, he'll get up to speed. Like he's not from scouting. He's not from player development. Like he's baseball ops. Everyone's like, oh, he's going to get up to speed. He's going to figure it out. He had to hire a bench coach. He had to hire a new manager. He has to handle farm system demotions and promotions. He got to do this and that. He's got 5 days to prepare for the draft, and he's barely got enough time to hire new staff. So, like, I hope for the sake of the Nationals, I hope DeBartolo just lets Danny Haas and Brad Selick make all of these selections. And you know, a year from now, if he doesn't like those selections, maybe something changes. But to think that DeBartolo is going to have any insight at all whatsoever or opinion on who they should draft number 1, I think is crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, Haas from the Diamondbacks and what is it, Selick, right? From how do you say from Baltimore? So two model teams, right? Where Mike Rizzo was a old school scouting type. I don't know if maybe it's been Kate Anderson the whole time, right? And we'll find out, but. I just think that part of things is different. It's not like you can heavy cut somebody anyway because of the 75% rule, like with physicals. So I just think it's going to be interesting.
There's not a lot of guys that, you know, refuse to turn in their medicals this year. And I don't think anybody that did decide not to turn in their medicals and forego that 75% guarantee, I don't think they're in play for the number 1 pick whatsoever. Right. So yeah, I do think the Boris Rizzo dynamic that you brought up is a really interesting one because I'm sure there was some side conversations taking place there. Like, hey, I'll take care of you, Scott. Don't worry. Like your guy's going to be my guy. Now that, you know, that phone line doesn't exist. So we'll see. I don't even know who's going to make that pick. Like, is it going to be Danny Haas? Is it going to be DeBartolo? Like, I don't even know who's going to have the trigger button there. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy.
So I should say this. Technically, I've talked to people, DeBartolo is going to have the pick. It is his.
Yeah, role. But he's got to take a recommendation if he's not a baseball guy.
Exactly. So ultimately, the pick will fall onto his lap. I've confirmed that. But to think that he has any feel for who they should take or who they like, I think is crazy.
So you think it's not gonna be coming from ownership then?
I don't think it's going to be an ownership pick. No.
Okay.
No.
So if you guys are not subscribing to Joe's podcast, the Overslot Podcast, he just did a podcast the other day on this very subject, and it was very enjoyable. So kudos on that.
Thanks, Ian.
Seth Hernandez, compared to the other prep pitchers that you've seen, you know, in the recent past, I suppose.
For me, he's not Jackson Jobe. For me, honestly, my conversation with Seth kind of revolves around Dylan Lesko before Lesko got hurt. I think Lesko had a little bit more fastball value, a little bit better fastball metrics. Dylan Lesko didn't have anywhere close to the changeup that Seth Hernandez does, but I think Seth Hernandez has a better frame. He's a better mover. It's a cleaner arm action. I kind of bucket them in the same spot. I would put Jackson Jobe a half tick above those guys, and then man, Hunter Green and Mackenzie Gore and those guys. I was so new to the process that I don't even think it would be fair for me to really stack those guys. So those are the three that immediately come to mind for me, though. It would be Jobe, it would be Lesko, it would be Hernandez, and he would be in that top three.
I don't know how many other people, how many rankings you're looking at, that sort of thing. So if like you could answer this or not, but anybody for sure that you're probably a little bit higher on, and then somebody you're lower on than consensus, maybe.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Let me pull up my board here. Guys that I'm higher on. I think I'm probably high on Xavier Nyans, and it may be a little bit of proximity bias because he is in my neck of the woods. I've got him at 15. I don't know where other people have him. I do know I've seen him in the 25 to 30 range places in like May. I don't know where he is anymore, but I really kind of buy the person. I buy the tools. I buy the athlete. I buy the upside. I quite like Xavier Nyans. And I think the other one that I have to be higher on than other people is AJ Russell. I'll tell you this. I'll just throw it on your guys' show right now. If AJ Russell a year from now, July 1st, 2026, is a top 50 prospect in the sport of baseball, would not shock me at all. He has next to 0 innings next to his name this year because Tennessee handled him very strangely. It's 6'6". It's over 7 feet of extension. It's up to 99. It's a 58-inch launch. Like, dude, like this kid is so strange and so unique. I'm a huge AJ Russell fan. A guy that I'm lower on than most. I think that would probably be a guy like, I think Alex Lodis would be a guy that I'm maybe a little bit lower on than most. I have him at 46 right now. I don't know where he is for other people, but there's a lot of whiff, there's a lot of chase, and I'm a guy that's kind of rooted in metrics and kind of weighing that with the eye test. So probably Lodis.
I heard you kind of mention it on another show, and you've been on so many. What like the bonus pools are so high now, right? And this class at the top isn't great. Like, how many teams do you think are like desperately trying to cut deals like in the top 10? And I know it's
100% of them.
Yeah, and it's prep guys with leverage, but
all of them. I think the only team that's not like desperately looking to cut is the Colorado Rockies to get Ethan Holiday at 4. I mean, every team I've talked to is looking to save $1 million in the top 10 picks. And I think you're going to be able to do it because as I started out this podcast, like, I don't know if there's a guy in this draft that goes in the top 8 in 2024. I don't know if there's a guy in this draft that goes in the top, certainly not in the top 5 in 2023. So yeah, it's a good group. It's not a star-studded group. It's a bunch of like number 3 starting pitchers and a bunch of like 3 to 3.5 WAR position players. And that's fine. But I think when you compare like look at Eli Willits. If you look at Eli Willits and you say, okay, I think there's a pretty straightforward path to Eli Willits being a 3-win shortstop, doesn't have a lot of power, but is going to do everything pretty well. Okay, if I compare Eli Willits to Gavin Keelan at Tennessee, pretty straightforward path for Gavin Keelan to become a 2.5-win player too, and we can save $3 million on one of those players. So yeah, I think everyone is desperately trying to figure out how to maximize their bonus pool. And because of it, I think comp round A and early 2, there's going to be some pretty splashy deals that take place.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot. So we talked to a few other people and, have kind of talked about, like, if Ava Arquette is your top college guy, I've seen people kind of say he's in that, like, Cam Smith-ish tier last year, right? Where he's, kind of in that range. And that's a guy that, I know it's your team, but I mean, I've seen him up as high as like 3rd overall, so.
I mean, I'm a huge Ava Arquette fan. I have him 5. I have questions on the hit tool. And if he ends up being a guy that, hits 230 and 18 to 22 homers and Like it's just not a player that you are glowing over at number 3 in the draft. But it's not even the number 3 part. It's not a player that you're like glowing over spending $9 million on. I love Ivar Arquette, don't get me wrong, but last year, for example, you probably get Ivar Arquette for $6.5 million. In 2023, you probably get him for $6.5 million. So the fact that teams are going to be forced to spend a mint on a player that just doesn't stack up with that dollar figure from years past is a tough pill to swallow for some people.
Yeah, I mean, me and James have talked about this exhaustively. Is that there's just nobody in the class that you're looking at and you're like, that's the guy. We've got a bunch of guys that we would be happy to have for sure, but it's like not anybody that doesn't have like warts in some fashion or another.
I think the guy that I would be most excited about, if you believe it, I would be very excited to have Liam Doyle. Like if you trust your PD and you have full conviction that this is a starting pitcher, not everyone has that conviction, but if you have full conviction this is a starting pitcher, I'd be pretty stoked to have Liam Doyle. But like the variance between having a, Tanner Scott or a Tarek Skubal is like enormous from a value perspective.
Yep. Do you want to move to the White Sox, James? All right. So your White Sox thoughts and like what kind of options are you looking for the White Sox at 10?
Yeah, man, the White Sox, I've continued to hear high school shortstops. I've continued to hear cut a big deal. I think the White Sox and Chris Getz are trying to stretch this bonus pool as best they can. It's still a farm system a couple of years later now since the last time we spoke, or since the Jacob Gonzalez draft, I should say, that still needs depth. It still needs more pieces and not just quality at the top. It does need both, but yeah, I mean, I look at a guy like Billy Carlson. I look at a guy like Steele Hall. I look at those two specifically as potential targets for the White Sox to save, $600,000 and go a little crazy with that second pick. So I do think there is a scenario where there's just a college pitcher available that they just didn't see, being available to them, like a Kyson Witherspoon or a Jamie Arnold, that they would have a hard time walking away from. But from all I can tell, it's high school shortstops.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a bunch of names too at 44, but it's just so hard because you've seen the same players mocked in the late first of the comp round. They know Sean Gamble really well from being an Iowa prep, now at IMG. Jaden Foskey's in our area. I think if either guy were on the board, I think they pop him, but either guy could also go in the 30s. I've heard them with some of the pitchers too. I mean, they have guys in the front office love Appenzeller, right? But now it kind of seems like maybe he ends up in Tennessee. So, I'm just curious I think that 44 pick really intrigues me, but it's going to be basically who doesn't get taken in front of them. But I think they'll go to $3 million with that pick, and that's like number 32 overall money, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's a number of guys, like it wouldn't surprise me at all if the White Sox went high school shortstop in this class. Like I don't think there's any chance that Josh Hammond gets there. But if you told me it was a Billy Carlson, Dax Kilby year, and they just went back to back with a couple of high school shortstops and figured out where they're going to play later, like the Colson Montgomery thing, I think you and me and everybody can agree, the odds of him playing shortstop even 3 years from now, I think are deteriorating. So because of that, like you got to have other players ready to step up into that role in 2028, for example. So, and the White Sox don't look terribly close to competing just right now. So I think you can take some chances and get some high end upside athletes.
How do you think White Sox fans should feel if, like I'd be pretty excited about Billy Carlson, but I think people will hear immediate swing change and get freaked out. Like, how would you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair criticism. I think it's a fair concern. Like you look at this organization to this point, they haven't had a whole lot of success with developing bats across the course of the last handful of years. I mean, I know Colson Montgomery made it, but he's 23, and I know he's having a kind of a hot start here to a Chicago White Sox career, but it wasn't very good at AAA. It wasn't very good in the minor leagues until this season. George Wolkow has kind of run into a brick wall. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously area for concern there. But at the end of the day, like the big league club, your Chicago White Sox needs a shortstop. Like you need a quality actual shortstop that provides defensive value. And right now, personally, from this chair, I don't see that player in the organization.
James, do you want to move on to the last couple there's a little battery of things that you wanted to
so the nine, so I guess just at this point, like craziest thing that you've heard that you kind of believe that you can also share.
I mean, the Daniel Pierce to the Angels thing at 2 has been something I've talked about for like a month. I don't think they're going to do it. I think they are trying to find a way to save enough money with that number 2 pick to drag him down to the top of the second round. But that's something that I think would be stunning in this draft, obviously, to see a player like Pierce go that high. The one that I've continued to hear a lot over the last week is that Caden Bodine has quite a bit of love inside of the top 12 picks. So, not a big offensive force there, but I think, anybody with his defensive floor and bat to ball skills in a draft that doesn't have a lot of superstar upside, if you haven't fallen in love with one of the high school shortstops, taking Caden Bodine and having a starting defensive catcher that is going to put the game in motion, you could do worse.
And then as far as like some of our local guys, I mean, I think Foskey probably goes the highest, you think?
I think Foskey probably goes the highest. Let me go back and look at who's
you got
in the
Foskey, you got Jack Bauer potentially.
Yeah, here we go.
Appenzeller.
I don't think Appenzeller has many bites inside of the top 40 picks right now. I mean, I could be totally wrong. I know there are some teams that love him, but from what I've heard, he might be just pricing himself out. And I think his basketball from the spring was what did him in. I mean, he never had a chance to ramp up. So, yeah, I think Appenzeller could go in the second. I think Foskey probably goes in the top 50 picks. Like you said, Jack Bauer could go anywhere. I've heard that he wants to go to Mississippi State. I've heard that he wants to experience college. But you look at what the Angels did specifically last year with a thrower, not a pitcher, in Trey Gregory Alford. I could see that happen. I could see the Brewers going for someone like Jack Bauer, who have really just gone, stuff hunting in recent years. And then as you go a little bit deeper and you get some deeper cuts, like Brandon Shannon in the third round, Ethan Moore in the third or fourth round, I think guys like Enzo Infelice and Connor Essenberg, like they could fit somewhere in that 4 through 7 range. And we'll just have to see who pulls the trigger. But I will say it is a pretty good year for high school, like at least from a depth perspective, high school athletes there in Illinois.
So lots of these guys are really close to me. Like Bauer's, in the same conference that I coach football in, and then like my kid's school is Lincoln Way West, where Connor Essenberg goes. So, like they're my kids are really young, but that's where they will end up going. And then Enzo, I mentioned to you earlier, is a guy like I know one of his hitting coaches. So seeing him go would be kind of interesting. I know he's a Cincinnati commit. So seeing the local guys, it's always fun. There's a whole big group of them.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. Like Enzo hit like 550 this year, like 550 with like 12 homers. The kid just bangs. I think the only question with Enzo is like, does any team have total conviction that he's going to catch at the next level? Is he too big? Is he too stiff? Like, is the body backing up? But if you're just, I guess it boils down to what Enzo wants from a signing bonus perspective, because I think he could get $250,000 in his sleep. Can he get $500,000? I think that's where there's a lot of delineation.
Speaking of guys, I have to ask because he's my guy. And nobody knows if he's going to stick a catcher. Tatum Gray. What are your thoughts on him?
I don't think he's going to stick at catcher, but I don't think it's going to matter because he's a freak of nature. He is a buffalo in this class. He is an above average to plus runner. He's very athletic underway. He tests well. Like that, you could put that kid in right field tomorrow, and I think he would be fine with a half hour's worth of reps. Really good athlete. And I don't know if it matters anyways, because Tatum's another guy that's big and strong, and he's going to be carried by the bat. I think he hit a couple of balls at the combine over 112 miles an hour. So yeah, I mean, does it really matter if it's behind the plate or in right field? Like he could be Hunter. Who's the right fielder for the Royals all those years? Hunter Renfroe.
Yeah,
guy with the absolutely enormous arm and power and kind of some hit tool concerns. Like, yeah, he's a monster, man. He looks different than every other guy in a uniform.
Yep, that was my thought as well. I saw him in the Super 60, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he does. His body does things you don't expect someone that big can do.
Yep.
So
James, you want to?
Yeah, we can just, I know Joe's got to get out of here. So,
Yeah.
I mean, teams are just meeting this week, right? Like all the scouting staffs in town and going over the final board and then just kind of wait until Sunday.
Yep. So last week, the week of July, whatever that was, July 1st, there was a couple of teams that got together, but most teams that I've talked to have started this thing yesterday, July 7th. A couple of teams are starting on July 9th. And then most teams go all the way through Saturday. They don't take a break. Some teams end on Friday and let everyone break for the Futures game and kind of take a little break on Saturday. But yeah, I mean, it's full speed ahead with, getting input from agents and biomechanics and everything. It's a really comprehensive process that I don't think people understand how many man hours are put into. But yeah, this is crunch time, man.
Seems like a lot of this could be solved with the draft in June, but hey,
Hey man, you're speaking my language.
All right. Well, thanks. Right. Thanks, Joe. We appreciate all your time. Do you want to once again just drop where people can find all your stuff?
Yeah, Joe Doyle MILB on Twitter, and you can find my twice weekly MLB Draft podcast at patreon.com/overslot. And the top 615 board and my latest mock draft on Saturday will go up at futurestarseries.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. You got another week left, and then you can kind of maybe take off the gas just a little bit. So congrats on that, and thanks for coming and hanging out with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, man. My wife is going to be thrilled. It's great to talk to you guys. Good to see both of you.
See ya.
Thanks.